There can be only one podcast. It may be the Prince of the Universe. Hi, folks. I'm Matt.
And I'm AI Wes.
Okay, so we have this book, this card deck of tales. It is an interview kit to interview someone's life story. Someone gave it to me, and I'm going to use this on my dad. My dad, if anyone doesn't know, had cancer for a while. And the bad kind, the kind you don't live from because they always spot it too late. By accident, they found it early, right before that, the final stage, and wiped it out. So
this podcast has gotten really serious quickly.
Yeah, and then went back. So, but anyway, during that time, I'd shared the story with someone. He goes, "Well, hey, you may want to jot down and record his life story." I thought it was a cool idea.
Yeah, definitely.
But looking at a few of these cards, I also thought this would be a good idea for us to answer, too, some of these live questions. These are divided into 3 sections here. Pink is early life, red is midlife, and green is later life. There's 150 of these, so I'm assuming there's 50 in each one. So we're going to do all 150 tonight. I'm kidding.
Wow.
We're going to do just a few, okay? And we don't have to keep the answers long. We can keep them shorter as long as we want to go on these, okay? I have not looked at them. I'm looking at the first one now.
Excellent.
First one, how did you get your name? I mean, Stephen is my dad's name. Matthew was just a name they came up with.
I'm not exactly sure how I got my name, but I was born July 28th, 1977. And my mom did tell me if I would have been born in August, I think Elvis died around the 10th. I could be totally wrong.
Shut up. You would have been called Elvis.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be my first name. It would have been my middle name.
Wow.
Yeah.
1 month away from having a middle name of Elvis.
Right.
Thank goodness you were born in July.
I'm so disappointed.
You could have been having some
Never
blue
tell
suede
somebody
shoes.
what could have been when
What
it's
could
way
have been.
better than what the reality is now.
So funny. My girl Piper would have been called Pearl. If my wife can have a time travel machine, she'd go back and agree to the name. She loves the name now. She hated it before Piper was born. I said, fine, Piper. And about 6 months into it, she went, let's call her Pearl. And I went, no. Now it's Piper. We're not going to change that name. And originally, I had their names switched. I was going to call Meridian Piper and Piper Meridian was what I imagined what we were going to do. And Megan switched the names on the babies. I was like, oh, okay, when we named them. So, because I was, in my head, I was calling Meridian Piper and Piper Meridian until she said, okay, that's what their name, she switched the names. I was like, oh, all right.
She took creative control from you.
She did. Ella was going to be called Brookhaven. I wanted the name Brookhaven. Megan hated that, so we
For Mississippi?
Yeah. All the kids were named after Mississippi.
Okay.
Forest. Mississippi, where I'm from, is Forest. So his name was always going to be that way. But, yeah. All right, next one. Where were you born and where were you raised? I was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, raised in Forest, Mississippi until I moved here. Where were you born and where were you raised?
I was born in Monroe, Louisiana, and I was raised in the outskirts of West Monroe.
Balkanville. Yeah. There you go. The real man come out of Balkanville there. What were your parents like?
Really missing a few teeth. What were my parents like? Oh, man, we're about to wrap this podcast up. Do you want to go first? Because I know yours is going to be so much more positive than mine.
We talked about this over Christmas. I don't talk about it. I mean, my parents were just different. Our parents were different. Yours and mine.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it. We'll go to the next
Well,
question.
no, I don't want to skip it. I
mean, my parents are very nice and, good parents.
But your parents were, they...
Well, I get I like hosting and having people over because mom and dad always had an extra seat. My mom still to this day, if you just show up around lunch, she will put an extra plate out and make extra food if she has to. That's the type of person she is.
But your parents were very protective of y'all to a certain degree.
Yeah.
They shielded y'all from certain things.
And I understand why you have your own kids too. And, you think, dang, kids are crazy in the 80s. Well, they're crazier now.
Yeah.
So you don't want your kid getting messed up with the knuckleheads
Right.
that are out there. So I completely understand. You start understanding. You start understanding what your parents were going through at that point. Like being overprotective and stuff. And yes, they were overprotective.
Yeah,
but
I think it's interesting to get old enough and see your parents as humans versus your parents. Like my girlfriend
they
asked
don't
me,
understand,
like
stuff like
months
that.
ago, she was like, if you could go back and do something, what would you think it would be? I said, I'd like to meet my parents before they were my parents. I would like to see what they really were like
As humans.
Yeah,
Regular
before
people.
I
Yeah.
came into the picture. So anyway, my mom did not work my whole life.
My mom didn't either.
She was what some people would say when you wrote on your paperwork at school, like what your parents did. My mom was a homemaker.
My mom
And
too.
I can't say that she succeeded at that. As far as making it pleasant, but that was her profession. She was she had some real struggles in her life, and she died pretty young, 64, from a lot of that. So,
Okay.
but I can say this: the older I get, I understand a lot of her struggles. She just did not. She was not proactive in getting ahead of some of those things.
And it's good that you have that understanding, because I have another understanding too. Because when you were in school and you were talking about how big a deal it was, your parents were like, it's not that big a deal, and you're like, you don't understand. And they say, yeah, I do. And you're like, no, school was different when you were younger. No, high school's the same. High school's the same. It's the same cliques, the same thing, the same this, the same that.
Yeah.
And now I find out, oh wow, it's just the same stuff that happens. Just different era. So that's another thing I understand now that I'm older.
Yeah. And my dad was a pretty quiet, angry guy that graduated in like graphic design from college. And I think within 10 years of that, technology had basically taken his degree. So I think that added to his bitterness and frustration in his life, which bled into his fatherhood. So yeah, that's what my parents were like.
And Brandon's got divorced.
Yes, his parents got divorced, and it is a point of reference pretty routinely. A lot of trauma that is always there, but he's become
People
way
don't-
better at enjoying it.
Just to let you know, a few months ago, we did a podcast with Brandon. And Brandon starts off with, well, see, my mom and dad got divorced. And Wes is actually one of my top moments on Prince of the Universe. He go, oh.
Yeah, I mean, he always plays that card. It's like, dude, most everybody's parents are divorced,
Okay.
but he has some real trauma from it. Like,
No.
he
I
would
love
answer
him.
this question, and it would go even twice as long as I've went.
Oh, my Lanta. All right, so here we go. Where are your parents from? Mine, one is from, my mom's from Gadsden, Alabama, which is North Alabama. My dad was from Mobile, Alabama, which was South Alabama.
My dad was from Sterlington, Louisiana, and my mom was from Dubach, Louisiana.
Dubach. Ooh. Nope, ain't no party like a Dubach party, because the Dubach party don't stop. Guess that's what they say.
I don't think that's what they say.
This is funny. This is the next question I was gonna talk about. But how did they meet? Mine met in college.
My parents met at a bar, and my dad told me the story about this, one of our conversations before we stopped talking. And my mom was there with a friend of hers named Thelma. I can age us with the name Thelma. But, and he thought my mom's friend was the hotter of the two. and I think he tried to, put some game on her. And I think that frustrated my mother because he said my mom went to the bar to get a drink and wasn't being served quickly enough and took the glass and threw it at the mirror and shattered the mirror behind the bartender.
Okay.
Which I think is funny because my dad at that point, he's all in on my mom, which was nothing but a precursor to the next 20 years, I can assure you. So his judgment is pretty rotten. He got what he paid for.
I'm going to bring Brandon back on the podcast and ask him the exact same questions. Okay.
Excellent.
So, what do you think Heath would say?
He probably doesn't know.
Okay.
He's too self-absorbed.
Stop.
He doesn't care.
Stop.
He doesn't care about anybody else but himself.
Okay. All right, what were your grandparents
He
like?
told me yesterday, I should have called you back, but I fell asleep. It was 1:30 in the afternoon, and he texted me at 5:45. He didn't call me. He just texted me, hey, I meant to do this. Like, dude, why are you taking a nap for 4 hours? It's just, he just don't care, man.
Are you disgusted that he's 30 years older than us?
I'm not. Well, he's not.
In mind and
yes,
spirit?
yes, yes. He basically has dementia. If dementia was based on putting someone above yourself, he's full blown.
Okay. What were your grandparents like?
My grandmother was probably the sweetest lady I ever knew because she had a mess of outlaw kids and they grew up pretty poor. And my grandfather was a pretty unique guy for what I knew about him. He died when I was like 11, but he died in his 80s. But he had one eye, and he had one eye missing because when he was a kid, so the story I was told, they were playing and somebody fell on a butter knife and it cut his eye out. So he just had a white eye
Whoa.
and another eye. But he chewed Red Man
Chewing
tobacco.
Yeah.
Always wore overalls, always wore a hat. And he was a pretty unique guy, very funny. My mom's side of the family are the one-liner smartasses who I get my personality from. And then I have the dark side, which is, my dad's side, which is very withdrawn, that I try to work on. So
There
you're
you go.
up.
Well, there you go. On my dad's side, I was closest to because I knew them the longest. They'd stayed alive the longest. My grandfather worked for the newspaper back in the day, back when its heyday. He set that. Now his job was all computers, but he was the one who set the design, set design layout. And as he had retired a few years later, then computers took his job, so he didn't have to experience what your dad did. My grandfather rode the wave until it went mellow.
Good for him.
And he got out at just the right time. In fact, he died in the mid-2000s, back when newspapers were still there,
Yep.
but only your parents had them. The kids didn't get a newspaper.
Yeah.
So the writing was on the wall, but you couldn't, and you could see the newspapers getting smaller and
Sure.
smaller, but newspapers were still in the, everyone had a newspaper.
People still had a USA Today when you went
Yeah.
to the hotel. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And your parents still got the newspaper. Everyone still got the newspaper in a way, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So he never got to see the collapse of newspapers. He died before that happened. So
The destruction of paper media.
And to be honest, if he would have made it to the early 2010s, he would have seen the decline and eventual decay. What it's been now would have broken his heart. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, you fast forward him 20 years later, he's a sad man. But he didn't have to see any of that. So
Yeah.
it's kind of just perfect timing in his life as career-wise goes. He felt like he accomplished something. Right?
Yeah.
His job was still a job. And then my grandmother, who passed away just 2 years ago, lived in her 90s and everything, really fun. One I was closest with a lot because I'd go visit her a lot. Laughed all the time. I was always her favorite because I was the first grandson, stuff like that. And so, tons of good memories with her. And during Christmas, we got a lot of her Christmas stuff that she had around the house.
I think I remember you talking about that on a podcast.
Yeah, during
Christmas
I'm
stuff.
always comforted because I still have her angel on top of the tree.
Yeah.
And other little things that used to be around her house that I remember just staring at as a kid forever.
Yeah.
And now it's like, she's still with us in a way. On my mom's side, my grandmother had a really wild life, was a rockette at one time in New York, lived in New York, lived the big life, quit being a rockette because she got married too early and they cut her from the rockette. She couldn't be married at the time. But hung out with in Desi Arnaz's club because she was friends with the Cabana girls that were working at Desi's club, so she got in for free.
Okay.
And would go to and back in the day, that was hard to get into that club where Desi Arnaz would perform every night. This is back during I Love Lucy, the height of I Love Lucy, where the club was just packed.
Is that like
out.
when they had like the Copacabana and all that stuff?
So she did all this, and she saw Lucille Duvall in her big mink furs and everything coming in, and she never got to talk to her because she was, over in the side, but she got to hang out and be around, legendary TV people during the height of their careers in the 50s, 40s, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they were big on radio. Excuse me, they were big on radio back then.
Okay.
And so lived a really wild life. Met my grandfather, who had joined the Army. Married her right before he left, then came back. Eventually stayed. He was military, I think his whole life, became a colonel. Made it all the way up to colonel, which I did not know was that high of a rank till I got older. But she was still known for years as the colonel's wife. And when she went on the military base to do the grocery shopping, there was a grocery store market there. Everyone would say hello to her because they knew who she was, and everyone, paid their respects to her and everything. And I knew my grandfather died when I was young, but I think me and my brother are really the only ones old enough to have memories of him. Everyone else was too young.
Yeah.
And he was always super nice with us, and always joyful. So yeah, that was my grandparents. I even know my great-grandmothers. One in particular died when I was in college or right out of college. So everyone lived really long lives. And on my dad's side, my mom's side too. So 96, 94. Aunt Tempe died when she was 99. I mean, geez.
My goodness.
Anyway, all right. So, what are some of your earliest memories? I think I know some of my earliest memories, but you go.
As far as what would be interesting with the podcast, I mean, I can remember seeing Empire Strikes Back in the theater.
You can, because I want to say that I do too. That was going to be one of mine. I remember, and see, the thing is, I can't. My mom and dad did take us because 3 and under were free, and they couldn't afford a babysitter. And I was 3, so it was still free.
You were born in 77, right? Or 78?
Yeah, we were both born in 77.
So we
I'm
didn't.
Like a month, 2 months older than you. Something.
So we didn't see Star Wars, but we saw Empire.
I was in the theater for Star Wars.
Well, I know I saw it, but I really remember seeing.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I really remember seeing Empire.
Yeah.
Because of the part where Yoda says there is another. And like my mom got really excited. She's like, "Did you hear that?" So she was kind of my Star Wars gateway.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I remember standing up and grabbing onto the seat in front of me and looking over and being scared to death of the four-legged walkers. I thought they were the freak. They're these giant beasts. Everyone's running from them. And I want to say that's one of my first movie memory was being scared of the four-legged walkers. They just scared me to death.
Well, being scared of something, I can remember always wetting the bed when Wizard of Oz came on that night.
The monkeys or the witch?
The monkeys.
Monkeys were pretty freaky.
And then after I stopped watching Wizard of Oz, I peed in the bed for other reasons. But definitely at the beginning, it was because of Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
I remember my mom would lay us down for nap time, and she had one of those like little accordion fences you put on the door post to make sure your kids don't get out. I was tall enough to step barely over it. The low point, I could get one leg over and slide over. And then my little brother was just tiny enough to squeeze through the bottom. And so we would sneak down the hallway, and she'd be watching Lassie.
That is a PG story right there. She was watching Lassie.
Yeah. while she thought we were taking a nap.
I was
We were just
expecting
kinda-
her to be watching General Hospital drinking wine.
No, she was just watching Lassie and doing ironing clothes and folding laundry.
So we got different moms.
And yep,
Totally.
different moms. And we would, and when Lassie was about to be over, we'd sneak back down and get back over and crawl back into our beds, But we would watch a little bit of Lassie. I remember.
I got in
Yeah.
trouble a lot in kindergarten because I never could take a nap. I was too wired up.
I didn't want to take naps either when I was a kid. Never wanted to take a nap.
It was the beginning of poor conduct for me.
Yeah.
And
I remember I made a deal with the teachers one time. I said, hey, if I just sit here and be quiet and don't say anything, will y'all let me stay? And they said, all right. So that was the deal. I had to sit there and be quiet, and I just sat there and listened to them because at least I wasn't napping like the children. And so I was happy. And I mean, at this point, I'm like 5 or 6, but I
Yeah.
remember that clear as day that we made a deal that I could stay up as long as I don't, act like a brat.
right.
Then just sit there and listen to us talk and gossip about things I don't know about. I couldn't remember a single thing, but I was just happy I was not having to put my head down on a sleeping mat.
Yeah.
And they weren't comfortable at all. I didn't understand because we didn't have pillows. I don't know. I didn't have pillows back
No,
then. They
no.
gave you just a mat to lay down on. I
Yeah.
was like, what is this?
Right.
And people would sleep on it.
Yeah.
I was like, well, how? So I just never got into that. That's funny we had the same. I do one time they turned on the TV and the Bozo Show was playing. And I was super happy I got to watch the Bozo Show. First time I ever got in trouble, though, me and my brother were trying to make, I don't know, we thought we wanted to make an extra layer of bed covers on top of the comforter. So we got liquid soap and got a box of Kleenex, so squirting the liquid soap on the Kleenex and pressing it down, sticking it to the comforter. And we made it almost to the very bottom of that comforter by moving. Then that's when my dad flipped on the lights. We probably jumped so high we hit the ceiling, and that was that was the first whooping I can remember. And I would have, if I was my dad, I'd have whooped too.
That's a
I've been
good
so
story
mad.
right there.
Yeah. All right. We can
See,
stop.
I had lotion and Kleenex's whole different mess.
Why did I not see that story going that way?
Yeah.
Okay. What did your parents do for work?
My dad was graphic design. He worked at the paper mill here when it was called Mandeville before it was Riverwood and graphic packaging and all that stuff. But he did a lot of art for like alcohol companies and things like that, and like did a lot of the ink work. That's what he got into later, also with a few different companies in town. He designed. There's a place here that makes bags. It's called Sunbelt Plastics. When it opened in the 80s, he drew that logo that they eventually went with. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was let me see. Hold on. Did I do for work? Still pastor. What were your siblings like when you were young?
I love how we didn't delve any further into that.
Oh no, I mean I don't have anything to say. I mean he's still working, so I mean.
Gotcha.
But what did your siblings do? I mean, I know your story.
Read the
What
question.
were your siblings like when you were young?
Ooh, brother.
These are great questions for you.
Well, my sister is 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that. So when I was about 4 or 5, she was becoming a woman and doing what teenage girls do.
Yeah.
My sister was really pretty, really smart. And I definitely think that helped drive my mother even more crazy, along with Prozac and wine and Donahue. So, yeah.
Would you say that your sister has different memories of your parents then? Were they
Totally
different people
different.
back then?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I listened to a
Since there's such a big age
podcast
gap
about
between you two.
addiction, and they talked about parents that have really strong addictions, whatever that may be, and they get another kid brought into that, especially when it's a 10-year difference. You're raised by 2 different parents. So,
Wow.
yeah, her memories of my mother and my dad are completely different than mine.
Yeah. Well, since there's such a big gap, I figured there would be.
Yeah, I mean, because you got to think, like, anything you pick up after 10 years, especially being a parent, I would assume your skill set hopefully is way more developed. But I think the fact that we were so far apart, it made us have a wedge that we never could get past. No matter
Yeah.
as soon because of when I was 15, she was 25, and
It's too big of an age.
yeah,
gap.
you're never going to catch up to that, and eventually that relationship just went tits up.
Yeah. I think for me, I have five siblings, including me would be six. The brother underneath him when he was a kid, basically his own silly, kept to himself a lot. He's changed a little bit as he's gotten older, but Bray has probably changed the most. He used to be the kidder, the goofball, the crazy guy, and he still has that in him. But we make a joke. He married a wife that squeezed all the fun out of him, and
I got some buddies that
are like that.
nailed that themselves.
And he was a little bit of a deviant as a kid. Got in a little bit of trouble here and there. But the thing is, though, and he's still fun. But that kind of old school, great, hilarious, crazy, zany side is kind of gone from him now. Jordan's a lot different now too. He's led a different life than a lot of us have. So it's kind of changed him a little bit, not for the worse or better. Just, he doesn't come around as much. Where back then I could never imagine him not being a part of the family, but he stayed away for years until he finally started coming back around again.
Yeah.
And Caleb's changed, not a little bit, but not too much. Again, marriage changed him a little bit too. He's a little bit different because of that. And then my sister, that's kind of always been the same. She hadn't changed that much, I feel like. I'm not surprised. She walks to the beat of her own drum, does her own thing, wonders what's wrong with everyone else because they're not like her,
God, I've dealt with that my whole life.
Really doesn't know
it has
why
really
people
pushed
are not
a lot
like
of
her.
people away too.
Yeah.
Man,
welcome to
a tough
reality. Welcome to reality. So, but not that she's unrealistic, just that she just doesn't understand why some people just are so lazy at work. Because she was never lazy at work. Well, no. That's why you run your own bakery now.
Yeah.
That's why you're a manager.
Right.
I wish I could be a manager. I wish you could figure out how to show up on time.
Right.
That's what I wish you could do.
Yeah.
And it's someone like, that's not like someone like that. Someone like in your ability that says, I don't know why anyone else thinks, well, because people aren't motivated the same.
Yeah.
People just aren't. And I'm sorry. People just don't think the same way you do. And, we got time for one more.
Let's not do a young one. Let's go to a different card color. Let's
You
jump
want to go
it.
to a different one? We're going to do these until we'll do these periodically throughout the whole
Well,
thing.
let's just jump one. This is our wild card for
All
the
right.
evening.
All right. You want a midlife? You want a late life?
Let's do late life since we're both late.
Oh, my Lord. All right. We'll do late life.
We are late to the nitro
He
party.
doesn't want to say anything about... Okay, here's a late one. Hold on. Let me make sure I got the late one here.
Get your finger in there.
There we go. Later life. Well, this is way too... this is not us.
Oh, okay.
How do you feel when you became a grandparent?
Ugh.
I guess we're not in late life. Hold
No.
on. No, this is grandparent questions.
No.
No.
This is not
Let's go
the
midlife.
expanded universe I'm looking for sure.
Excuse me. We'll go to midlife. Sorry, we're not late life, Wes. We're midlife.
Only
We're
Heath
midlifers
is.
here. All right. Did you attend any school or training after high school?
A little bit of college, yes.
I did college.
I went 1 year and then realized I didn't like school when it was free. And if I've got to pay for it,
then screw that.
this is not for me because I'd already left home and stuff, and financially that was just, I didn't want to owe for a forerunner to have a skill set that was going to pay me $25,000 a year.
Yeah, I did my bachelor's degree. I got the master's scholarship. They held it open for me for a year because I was too nice to tell them no. I said, well, let me. All right, so sorry about that. It something happened and the mics cut off is what happened. So
Technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties.
You
but
boomer.
I'm telling you what, boomer. But we'll stop there. Good questions. Wes was getting a little too antsy about talking about his child life, so we had to stop and move on to the midlife.
Normally I have a copay when I talk about this stuff.
But anyway, there you go. If you like it, we'll do more of these. That was fun. I enjoyed it. We can do more little interview questions and everything.
How broken are these podcasters?
I'm telling you. Well, we
Stay
were going to
tuned.
talk about Deadpool, but one of us hasn't seen it yet.
I know. It would be me. I had therapy.
So we'll be talking about that next time on Princes of the Universe.